What's up, folks? Here for a little Lucas and Zack special time. Um,
we need a title.
Lucas we have and Zack, a title.
New reviews.
We have a title. Like I call them Lucas and Zack special presentation. What I refer to them as. And then I create elaborate titles. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure I'm going to title this one Kong versus Godzilla Fight and Film Analysis.
Sounds great. People are going to think we're going to go like really detail analyzing every punch.
I'm not going to lie. There was part of me that was like, should we take the figure out, like, find a YouTube video of somebody putting the characters of Godzilla and Kong over boxers and then do our version of an announcers for that? But, you know.
Or should we just, like, we keep rewinding slow-mo and, like, draw lines to, like, a playbook to show what happens?
The telestrator. Use the telestrator. Yeah. But in case you hadn't realized, we're here to talk Kong Godzilla, which is like the big new movie on HBO Max. We're going to, in case anybody who has not seen the film yet is trying to find out if this is worth watching, super quick non-spoiler section. Before we get into like the stuff that's fun to talk about. I'll go first. This is a loud, dumb monster fight movie, which has the problems that you typically see with those movies, where you just have a lot of not great characters and a lot of story you don't care about between the monster fights. If you want to see monster fights, I guess you could watch this. If you're interested in something more complete as a movie, I think you'll be disappointed. That's my top line thoughts. Zack?
Yeah, my top line thoughts is this movie is stupid and people need to stop apologizing for it's stupid but fun. No, stupid means it's stupid. And the plot doesn't make any sense. And just because you like watching, giant animals punching each other at the end doesn't mean that they built an hour and 40 minutes of nonsense around it that I care about the people who are fighting or the people watching the fight. I have no connection. So even, the fight so-and-so being cool doesn't really affect me the way I feel like it affects other people or a lot of the action. I think that's just not what I'm moved by. As action movies are a hard hit for me. I don't connect to hard action scenes. But I can like action movies that I feel attached to the characters or the plot, but this has no attempt to. Maybe it does have attempt because they built so much plot, but we can talk about that.
It's certainly... We can argue. You can make an argument that they try to do stuff. I don't think it really succeeds. I think that this movie, if I'm going to be honest, and I think that there's a lot of people out there who are giving this really high reviews. I'm a little shocked by this. I'm a person. This should appeal to me. A large monster fight movie should appeal to me. And I honestly finished it, and I was like, "There's like 15 minutes of fun stuff in there, but it's stuffed with so much other crap in between that I'm not interested in." And I can't honestly give this movie a positive rating. I think I gave it a 2 out of 5. I think it's the worst of the 4, which is honestly saying something because I think Godzilla King of the Monsters is pretty bad. It's not. I
haven't seen King of Monsters. I don't like any of them, so I think that. So you can take what I say with a grain of salt because I just don't think I'm invested in these movies, but I don't blame it on the idea of a Kong picture. I don't think just the general idea I can't be invested in. It's just the execution they have during the MonsterVerse did not work for me.
That's fair. And I rewatched all 3 of the other ones in preparation for this, so you kind of have both ends of the spectrum of somebody who prepared to be involved in this universe going into this film and somebody who just kind of sat down and watched the movie. Because let's be real, when you put a movie on HBO Max, a lot of the people watching this are just random movie watchers who probably haven't seen all these movies and aren't stooped in the lore and are just sitting down to watch this movie. So we kind of represent 2 of the factions that are going to be watching this movie.
Yeah, and I also prepared for this by sneaking into zoo containers and giving angry stares to lizards.
Are you okay? Honest, the final question before we go into spoiler section: are you a Kong man or a Godzilla man?
I'm a neither person. I mean, I like lizards are cool. I've always been kind of an ape and primate person. I mean, I'm not none of us are too far from goats, but I'm really not too far. I think as far as like your root for, I think it's nonsense to think a lizard can take any ape, even if they breathe fire. Because that thing is like so much more intelligent and can use tools and can move arms. So my side was always Kong because he has so much more utility than a lizard that just stomps and moves like a little chunky guy that he is. Way too chunky Godzilla. He doesn't have enough athleticism.
I do believe actually that was a criticism of the 2014 Godzilla from Japan. It was like, you made Godzilla fat like Americans. And, yeah, I'm a Kong man myself. I do think there's interest. We'll go into the spoilers. There's interesting things about the way they have to set up these two characters to make this fight seem. All right, we're going to spoiler section. If you haven't seen the movie, jump off. If not, let's talk. It's spoiler time. Where do you want to start, Zach?
I don't know. There's not much to spoil because I honestly had no idea what was happening the whole movie. I know there were spaceships involved. There was like Journey to the Center of the Earth. There was like Kong's home in the Hollow Earth, and he had a cool throne that he sat in, like he was doing his album cover for his rap album. And he just like sits. That was the best part of the movie, was just how he sat in the throne. Godzilla, I have no idea why he was around. There's some weird plot to just have him like shoot lasers into the ground, and I was very confused. He was barely part of the movie. The movie wants you to root for Kong because Godzilla's just there for the fight.
Well, so this is the fourth movie in the franchise. The original movie, Godzilla 2014, basically introduces the idea of Godzilla, bases him in like his origin in the 1950s as a result of nuclear tests, and kind of brings him back. And initially he's seen as a threat, as kind of obviously, and then they start to realize that he is potentially an ally against and like a being whose goal is to achieve balance when there are other monsters in the world who potentially threaten that. Kong Skull Island goes in the 70s after the result of the Vietnam War and kind of introduces Kong. Godzilla King of the Monsters is a really batshit crazy film, which basically blows the universe open and not only has, Godzilla, but they also bring in King Ghidorah, Rodan, and like a bunch of other characters in like this big fight. In the end, Godzilla. That's finally when he kind of goes nuclear and starts really having all his powers, which is then weird because he doesn't have all those powers in this film. So the basic plot of this film is Kong is still on Skull Island, but Skull Island is now contained in a monarch.
I thought it was a modified Skull Island.
No, it is It's real Skull Island, but he's on Skull Island inside a containment used by Monarch. So this is a thing you see throughout the other films: is that Monarch has different of them contained. They're cocooned. They're inside volcanoes. They're inside ice. A bunch of them eventually get released. Godzilla's kind of just out there. Godzilla returns and attacks these facility, which is it's Apex Robotics or something. Apex Cybernetics. Attacks Apex Cybernetics. And the thing that's always Kyle Chandler and Millie Bobby Brown are characters from Godzilla King of the Monsters. Their continuation over character. And they're the ones who kind of give us the idea that, well, if Godzilla's attacking, there must be a reason. Godzilla isn't random, basically, because there's been like a continuation over these movies to be like, Godzilla moves in certain patterns. Godzilla does stuff for a certain reason. They sort of hinted the idea that they're trying to hide Kong from Godzilla because they don't want them to fight. Although, to be honest, nuclear Godzilla versus an ape does not seem like a real fight, which is, I think, part of the reason that Godzilla is no longer nuclear in this film.
Yeah, because it would be too much, so they just decided, let's forget that never happened. But I don't understand why he would become nuclear all of a sudden anyways, and why he was nuclear for the hours of movies before that. How is this like Godzilla just evolves?
They had to send a person into the Godzilla's underwater, under Earth, Hollow Earth living place and deliver like basically a nuclear weapon to supercharge him with nuclear energy.
This is complete nonsense.
Which is it's 100%. But this is also the loss of the best character in the franchise. Ken Watanabe is the scientist kind of defending Godzilla along. He's probably the best character in the entire franchise. And so in this film, Godzilla starts attacking. They're like, okay, we have to move. They want to move Kong to the Arctic to send him into Hollow Earth. I think to get a power source or to draw Godzilla in there.
It was to draw Godzilla so they can take him down, but why couldn't they just draw him somewhere else?
There's a lot of questions. And also, like, biggest question was,
they just had a lot of things they wanted to show. They want, like, we're going to show the actual Hollow Earth. We want to show these spaceships. So they just made a bunch of excuses to connect things together without it meaning any logic. When they should just do what they want. Just And they'll say, hey, they met up like on an alley and King Kong said mean things again to fight. That's all you need. Stop making so many excuses to tie stuff together when it is so disconnected. And
honestly, the Hollow Earth stuff makes sense in the context of the previous films because we know that Godzilla lives underneath the earth. We know that kind of exists from the last movie. So that's a natural progression of the franchise. Now, it's a ridiculous progression. It's kind of a goofy continuation. The Kong stuff feels really stupid, and Zach's just like making noise in the middle of the episode.
That's my Reddit, my daily drop my Reddit ring during the podcast.
It is really a daily occurrence. The Kong stuff feels really stupid. The fact that they're like, let's put him on a boat in chains, which is like also clearly like just an attempt to make us like Kong because he looks pathetic and sad.
I'm also not convinced that boat can hold him. It didn't seem like that's...
Let's go. This is actually, I'm going to bring up a very small point about the film, which I think is really interesting. Kong's size is really inconsistent throughout the film. The way that they show, like, there are scenes where he looks, like, if you go back to Kong Skull Island, he looks legitimately as tall as mountains. And then he just looks like a really large ape. Like, there's clearly an attempt in the Kong Skull Island to be like, this is giant Kong. This is bigger than the Peter Jackson one. This is bigger than the original. And in this one, there's a scene where they literally get to Antarctica and they drop him down in the snow, and he looks like just a normal size ape. He doesn't look like crazy big. Like, the sizing is so weird. Like, it seems like at times that he looks big when he has to be against Godzilla because they want to make it look somewhat normal. But then in other scenes, he looks like way small. There's like, if he's really as tall as a mountain, he does not fit on that boat. Like, his sizing is bizarre and like it's a real inconsistency. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are just like, oh, it's fun and stupid. But
it becomes not fun when you're taken out of it. When you can't connect the reality of the film, you still have to be able to, disappear into the movie. And when you are so disconnected or so distracted by inconsistencies, it's not fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's also like just a big difference between having a goofy, fun movie with like big monsters and just having a movie that. The problem with Kong and Godzilla is Kong and Godzilla wants to have mythology and build up all the story. If this was just a Godzilla versus Kong movie, where it's just like, we're going to throw them in some boring... If this was Alien versus Predator, and we're just going to throw them on some random pyramid and have them fight, like, you could maybe enjoy it in the goofy context of that. But this film wants you to take it more seriously. They want you to think that Kong is the king underground, and he has a throne, and that's why he can win a fight against Godzilla. And he has this weapon. Like, there's so many extra stuff in this film.
It's so dramatic, and the campiness that comes out of it, which is the tone it should have, seems purely incidental. Like, the lines that are dumb and funny, I think they think are really dramatic and intense and propel it. Where this movie should know what it is and go for much more of a camp value. Go for the fun, embrace the stupid. But I think this movie thinks it's like a smart sci-fi tale.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest problems with this film, and this is something that has been done slightly better in some of the other ones that I think work better, is this movie does not have fun characters. These characters are boring as shit. They're boring.
Rebecca Hall, I like.
Okay, her and her kid, who does the sign language Kong, they're my favorite characters. They're still not very good. I absolutely hate everything that involves Dennison, Henry, and Millie Bobby Brown. I would cut all of that from the film. It is so useless. So the only point of that storyline is
Henry, I want to talk quite a bit about, so we can go back.
Okay, we can do that in a second. Let me just make one point, which is that the entire purpose of these weird-ass conspiracy theory idiots who are like, there's clearly some kind of conspiracy, they listen to like dumbass podcasts. Please don't equate podcasting with those morons. Their only point is to get to sneak into a facility to realize that Mechagodzilla exists. You could just have fucking Mechagodzilla show up. I don't need Damien Bashir. I don't need them sneaking in and having this conversation. Damien Bashir could just show up with Mechagodzilla at the end final fight scene, and it would you don't need to explain why humanity would want to build a mechanical Godzilla to counteract Godzilla. That's just like self-explanatory. Of course, human beings would want a gun to compare to the big gun of Godzilla. Like, that's not that surprising. Is Millie Bobby Brown good at acting? Honest question. After watching Godzilla King of the Monsters in this film, she's terrible in both of them. Like,
I think she's fine. She's not given much to do. She's not given much of a character. She's fine.
I think she's bad. I think he's genuinely quite bad in both films.
Yeah. I think as an actress, is like solid in Stranger Things. I do think better at a younger age. I think as she's aging, maybe it's just a little distracted by her celebrity at this point, which I think can affect it because she is, not for our generation. We're old, but she is a huge celebrity for the teens.
Clearly, but this is an interesting thing that happens in all three Godzilla films. Is there is always a three-person plotline in these films that is just genuinely terrible and drags it down. In the original one, it's the weird family storyline between Cranston, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and Elizabeth Olsen, which is just bad. In the Godzilla King of the Monsters, it's Kyle Chandler and Vera Farmiga played Millie Bobby Brown's parents. That's a terrible storyline that I wish they would cut out of this film. And in this one, it's the Brian Terry Henry, Julian Dennison, Millie Bobby Brown storyline, which is just like, why don't you cut? You could have cut all three of these storylines, and they would make all the movies they're in better. If they just
the vibe is a little more different than what they go Godzilla. Godzilla is like overly serious and intense and just becomes boring.
It works at times, though.
Real life characters. Okay, I found everything human just insanely boring. This one I wouldn't say is boring more than just, as I said, stupid and nonsensical. I think there's a lot of momentum in their plots and they're trying something. I just don't think it works.
See, the thing is, maybe
there's an energy to it.
I like characters in the other films. This is the movie where I genuinely don't think I like any of the characters. Like, enjoy watching them on screen. Like, I will agree that the first one is a little too serious at times, but I still like that movie because I like some of the characters. I don't know. I don't know why they.
I do like Rebecca Hall because I think for some reason Rebecca Hall is like gravitas and her dumb lines makes it work. I think she's the one that, because I do think when you're doing something campy, when you realize that you're still taking it seriously and delivering it. I'm like for being very hypocritical of everything I just said and contradicting most of my words, but I think. Yeah. Everybody else, not that they're winking at it, but they're not able to deliver it in a way that the audience can buy, like Rebecca Hall can. Take the dumb shit and make the audience buy it. And I think she does. I think she works really well. She's
probably the best in it. I don't know if she's like the performance I enjoy as much as I think that she's just better than everybody else around her. I think Damien Bashir is kind of good in his one scene. He's kind of a good one scene performer.
He's being over top kind of villain character.
Yeah, it works with the film.
Of it. Yeah.
I'm genuinely a little bit confused about why they decided that the characters they really needed to carry over from King of the Monsters to this film was Millie Bobby Brown. Like,
it's for the kids. It's to get
I guess, man,
the teen audience because they want to root for it. It helps King of Monsters. Because Kyle Chandler they forget about. He's like shows up for 30 seconds at the beginning and they don't even really return to him.
Yeah, they did not care about. It is a weird thing that they did not. There are better characters they could have brought back in this film that have existed.
Like Aaron Taylor-Johnson, our world's
No. There are I wish they hadn't killed Ken Watanabe off in the second Godzilla film. He's way better. Yeah. They could have had Sally Hawkins. There's people who are related to these characters from like Monarch. They basically it was a weird cleaning house between these films.
Is anybody from Kong? I guess that took place in the 70s or 80s, so they would have to be old.
So Joel Morton is in this film playing, I believe, or I think he plays an updated version. No, he's in the last one. He plays an updated version of Coracus. But yeah, the problem is that Kong is just so old. That movie is so much older than the other ones. Yeah, it doesn't work.
With some of the characters, so I was wondering if I was missing something, because the problem with Rebecca Hall and her adoptive child kind of figure is they don't. Do they appear in a extra credit scene in Monsters or anything? Because they throw you away in this and you do not understand. There's a missing exposition to understand what the role is, who this girl is. They act like you have a connection to these characters right at the start and you understand what's happening, but they're not. I feel very confused. And I was kind of blaming on that. Either me not watching Kong Skull Island recently or missing one, but I guess it's just, it is all new and you're left in the blank.
Characters that are carried over besides Kong and Godzilla are Kyle Chandler and Millie Bobby Brown. The entire rest of the cast, including anybody related to Monarch, have not been in any of the previous films, which to me is a real screw up on their part. Why would you try to make the big team up movie
they,
and have nobody there? But it's not even about like having characters.
But they act like you know those characters. They act like, oh, look, it's your friends, and you understand what's going on, right? And I'm like, I have no idea who these people are. Why are they talking like we've been watching them for 3 movies?
Yeah, it's a really weird thing where like they just kind of cleaned house. I don't know why they did it.
I need to know who this girl is. Where did she come from? They did not give her backstory. She speaks sign language. For some reason, Rebecca Hall takes her. I'm not convinced she didn't steal her from like her Kong Island family,
okay.
Their last human residence.
There is a one-line explanation of what happened.
Okay.
There's something about the storm, which I believe is related to the King Ghidorah would like float around the earth in a giant tropical storm. And I believe there is a reference to that destroying the civilization of people on the island. You know, like it's the classic Kong story where Skull Island has a group of people who worship Kong as a god, right?
Yeah.
Well, that exists in Kong Skull Island as well. And I guess the idea is that storm destroyed them all, and she's the only one who survived because Kong saved her or something. And then Rebecca Hall adopted her.
Civilization of humans died in this island, and they throw it off in one line. Like a genocide happened.
Well, that's the problem when your only Kong movie before this team up thing is a movie based in the Post-Vietnam War era.
Yeah,
because then Your Godzilla movie is in 2014 in real time. Your King of the Monsters movie is in real time, and your Kong movie is 40 years before the events of everything else, which is just. It doesn't. Well, it's also just makes it unbelievable. It's like, really, you kept Kong locked up in a containment area for 40 years while he's chucking branches through the top of it? Like, it doesn't make any sense to say Kong is smart and understand things and be like, yeah, he's a dumbass who got stuck in this bubble for 40 years. That just doesn't make any sense.
That's why I assume there's like a credit scene or something that cut back to what Kong was doing during this whole God of the Monsters to set you up. But the lack of that, I think, might be a mistake. Actually, credit scenes, they can be silly, but they do serve a point in moving forward the franchises. It does give you some connection to what's going to happen next. That is, important in a way. Otherwise, things come very abruptly.
They also just could have done a better job tying this together. And part of that, again, is to me, it's just a big screw up that you have no one from the previous films appearing. Even like bureaucrats and military figures and like not people, not even, they don't have to be the main character, just but like the fact that your only connection to your previous films is Kyle Chandler for 30 seconds and Millie Bobby Brown becoming like a random subplot in this film, which is, again, I don't know who told
just
them
something to make it seem like a kid's movie so the kids can live vicariously through it.
Honest question. Are kids going to, I don't think kids are going to like that story. I think it's boring.
They love this movie. So maybe that's boring. Maybe they just like the monsters. I will say they love the movie. I do teach 12-year-olds. They half of my advisory saw it, and they were real shouting about it.
Right, but I feel like if you ask a 12-year-old, what did you like about this film? Their answer to this is Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, Kong has an axe. Yeah. Like I feel like no one is going to come to you and be like, so nobody's going to come to you and be like, man, I really love the plot line where Julian Dennison and Brian Tyree Henry and Millie Bobby Brown were like listening to podcasts and driving around in a van trying to find out who buys bleach. Justice for Ronnie Chang. Fire all 3 of them. Make Ronnie Chang a character in this movie. He's hysterical. He's a great comedian. He should have been in a bigger role in this film. I
don't know what you're talking about because 3 of my kids came in and said, you know what I want to be when I grow up? A conspiracy podcaster, just like Brian Tyree Henry.
It's also it's such a weird narrative choice to be like, it's 2020. You know what we really want to have in our movie? A conspiracy podcaster right after a bunch of
hero.
As a bunch of conspiracy theorists tried to fucking blow up the government. Like that's just a real
that they validate. That they say, guess what? He was right all along. Like all these conspiracy theorists could be correct. So we're validating a whole, subgroup that should not be validated and should not be given the time of day to think that there's a chance.
Right. It's weird because like in the previous films, they've always had like scientist characters who are like, something's not right here. There's like we're getting weird electromagnetic pulses, or we're getting weird, sonar readings and stuff. But it's always based on the idea that there's scientists who are looking at the data that's coming in and saying, something's not right here. And then that's how they find a monster. That's how they find something. In this film, it is literally like Brian Tyree Henry, who is an idiot. Like, he seems like a moron.
Somehow he infiltrated the labs, though, and
I mean, he can do his job, I guess, but there's no indication that he actually has any knowledge. He just thinks he has knowledge. He's like showering with bleach like a moron. I don't know why we're supposed to be giving this person like credibility. I've seen like reviews of people like Brian Tyree Henry steals this movie. I was bored out of my mind.
So miscast. That is not how he works best. Okay, let's go into this conversation. I'm concerned about Brian Tyree Henry's career. Yes. He had an incredible 2018, like a top tier year for an actor, between a great role in Widows, If Beale Street Could Talk, and prime voice role in Spider-Verse. Right? Oh, yeah, that's like his and Atlanta was at the I don't watch it, but I know that was top of the talk at that point.
And he gets funds. He's like got a role in White Boy Rick. He's got a role in Hotel Artemis. These are obviously not the same level, but he's like clearly balling out.
Well, since then he's just had like minor supporting roles in big blockbuster movies that he just either Joker, Child's Play, and this and the like Melissa McCarthy movie at HBO that no one watched. That I also think he was just a small goofy part. Maybe these are the movies he wants to make. Maybe he likes blockbuster, bigger things. But that's, he's more of the like soulful-eyed person. And I think I'm basing too much on his Beale Street character, but that's where I think he delivers the best. It is really delivering, some emotion, not a plot delivery device in blockbusters that he acts as, and definitely not like this quirky wackadoodle. I don't see Brian Henry as a great quirky actor like he is here. Yeah. He's just kind of wasted in a lot of the other movies too. Like he's wasted in Joker. He barely does anything. So I just don't know where the opportunities have gone or the choices he has made, because this is not a great. I mean, I'm sure he's banking some good money and good for him taking advantage of that. But I want to. Yeah, I want more. He needs to just be working with top tier directors.
This movie does not play into what
he does best.
He does best. It really doesn't. This movie is like wacky and quirky. There are a lot of people in the world who could play this role. I don't think it'd be necessarily a very interesting role, because I think it is a really boring role to begin with, and was never going to be something you walk to this movie is like, I'm so glad that role exists in the movie.
I think normally this is where you would take like some kind of sitcom comedic actor. Like this would be like a Rainn Wilson or like a Tony Hale kind of character.
Rainn Wilson would actually have been really good for this. Because Rainn Wilson
would be so obnoxious.
But Rainn Wilson seems like the weirdo who would legitimately be showering with bleach. He has that kind of weird... Yes. And it's because we have no Dwight. Dwight, obviously, he plays into that. But, like, Dwight seems like a character who would have progressed onto the point of conspiracy theory podcasting about aliens and kaiju while, like, showering with bleach to stop tracking them. That just, like, that plays more into the thing. And Henry is, like...
He's not weird enough for us to buy into it. He doesn't...
He's, like, so soulful and mournful and, like, has this, like, inner sadness and stuff.
In Widows, he's like terrifying, and it also still has like the soulfulness within his villainous arc, which makes it more terrifying. But he has like something to do in those movies, and he's not this laughable, quirky, comedic subplot.
Yeah,
get a comedian in there. Get someone who's believable as a weirdo. He's just not believable as a weirdo.
Yeah, you're right. Like anyone from the Shore universe of like Office, Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, all those things like that weird, like normal person who just happens to have a really weird side. Like he just doesn't really fit in this movie. It's also the part of the problem is that they play him off as the character that everyone is listening to, but then the minute they meet him, he starts taking orders from like a 14-year-old. Like the dynamic between those three characters is really weird. Like it doesn't make any like. Why is everyone just being like, yeah, this Millie Bobby Brown, she has she's like a kid, like her credit, like But the reason they follow her, doesn't make any sense. Let's talk about another thing in this film. This movie was directed by Adam Wingard, which, looking at his career before this, seems like a really bad choice for this film. The recent Adam Wingard movies The Guest, Blair Witch, and Death Note. That does not seem like somebody who's going to understand and get the monster fighting aspect of this film. Also, like,
I mean, he
two of those are not good.
As this kind of indie horror person. Because Your Next is also one of his biggest movies that brought him kind of into the spotlight. So a little bit before The Guest. So between Your Next and The Guest, he was seen as like the next big genre director. But the bigger opportunities he's gotten, I feel like he hasn't capitalized. Well, this, in a way, he has capitalized. This is, a successful movie. Just not in our eyes critically. So he's going to continue to get, I think, big genre-esque blockbusters. I think we're going to see him around for a while, whether anything he's is able to be good. I don't think he's able to combine story into a blockbuster. Any kind of meaningful story. He can just do the thrills.
I think
that is honestly how I feel a little bit about Your Next too. Is I never really buy into the characters. I think it's the thrills and the action that is successful in that. The Guest is a solid movie.
This is really good.
Yeah.
I think his really big problem in this film is that he struggles to understand like what this movie should be. Mm-hmm. Like, so I look at this movie and the thing I think of is, you have Godzilla and Kong. You're calling this movie Godzilla versus Kong. You're telling your audience this is a fight movie. And I have a theory about direct confrontation movies and why they fail. But this movie is like, it's a Godzilla versus Kong. Get ready for it. And that's like 15 minutes of the movie. It's like, I don't understand why he feels the need to put all this other stuff in the movie that is not important. Like, I understand why
he wrote it, right?
I mean, he had some level of say in the film as the director, and maybe it is more an editing problem. No, he did not write the film. Michael Dougherty, who directed the previous one, and somebody named Terry Russo, who's wrote a bunch of films.
So as far as I don't think the way the plot functions is fully for him, him to blame, but maybe some editing, some cutting of unnecessary plot lines.
Well, it's a combination of you could cut all the conspiracy theory podcast stuff and your movie would probably flow better because that stuff is a drag. But also simultaneously, you don't do a good job bringing Kong from 1974 to the present day to meet Godzilla. Like, you do a really poor job bridging Kong Skull Island in this film. You do an okay job bridging Godzilla King of the Monsters in this film. There's still some inconsistencies and some problems, but those movies are relatively close together.
But I think also making the plot or the battle and the fighting important to the plot or the crux of the plot would have been really helpful, when really it was just kind of like incidental. The real plot was, Damien Pachir trying to get whatever from the Earth. That was the real climax, and the Mechagodzilla was the real conflict. And it just happened to be that like King Kong and Godzilla met, so they're going to fight. But it really was not important to the story all along.
And I think that's shown by how contrived it is at times. Like, we're going to go by boat with Kong because, I don't know, Godzilla walks around in the ocean and like, but we're going to go on shipping. We're going to go follow the shipping patterns where he doesn't go. And it's like, that's stupid. You could have just not. You could have avoided this fight if you chose to, but you don't.
I need one more thing explained to me.
Go.
How does Mechagodzilla keep functioning once the guy's brain gets electrocuted?
Very simple. King Ghidorah's consciousness takes over Mechagodzilla.
Okay, that's what figured it was something along that lines. Yeah.
It's not really well explained. Also, can I just say for the record, the way they defeat Mechagodzilla is one of the stupidest things I've seen in movies in a really long time, and genuinely annoyed me as I was watching this. The fact that the way to stop this giant Mechagodzilla that is simultaneously beating two monsters is to pour alcohol into a vent of a computer is so unbelievably stupid and annoying that you spent this time setting up this monster as super powerful only to do that. Is about as stupid as Rise of Skywalker, where they're like, when Darth Vader's like, look, my giant fleet, and then they all randomly get blown up with like minimal effort. It was so stupid. Please stop setting up overpowered creatures only to defeat them in like lame ways with minimal effort. It's just really annoying.
Yeah,
Also,
I think if the movie really wanted to be daring, they should have Mechagodzilla win, and then he actually has the protector of Earth.
Or I don't know, have Kong and Godzilla fight together to defeat it. Like, actually have the two characters that you told us were going to fight Mechagodzilla. Like,
or don't have Mechagodzilla in it and make the movie about the fight between Kong and Godzilla, and don't make the movie about a robot.
This is another really good criticism, which is just like, why did you make a Godzilla? Well, this is the problem with a lot of these movies. Batman v Superman has the same problem. It's like, why did you tell us Batman v Superman and then throw Lex Luthor creating, I don't know, whatever the hell that name's that character is, Doomsday. I don't remember what the character's name is, but like, it's like, why would you tell us that these movies are something by their titles and then proceed to throw another character? This is a problem throughout the MonsterVerse, is that they love to waste these monsters. They've done like 4 monster movies and they've thrown like 7 kaiju into them. Like in Godzilla King of the Monsters, there's literally like Ghidorah and Rodent and Mothra and like 4 others. Like, they just throw them randomly into these films to the point where you stop.
He's not king of a monster; he's king of the monsters.
Yeah, but
do you think there'll be a sequel where he's the king of the monsters and they bring back the Space Jam characters? I'm into that. That's the only way they're going to get me to watch a 5th MonsterVerse movie is bringing the monsters.
I don't think they're doing a
Muggsy, Bogues, Alien. There's not going to be anything following this. They're going to do a 5th one. This was successful. They're not going to let it go.
I mean, I guess, but I don't know where you go from
here. Bring in a robot, not a mecha robot, a good robot, and then they all have to fight. I think the issue is that they can't take the risk for one of them to be a villain. I think for this movie to have worked, one of them really had to be the villain of the movie, the antagonist. But because we want them both to be heroes, that's why you have to throw in a 3rd villain so you can still root for them and not, cheer for anyone actually losing. I don't see why they couldn't have made Kong a villain in some sort. He could have escaped because he's been like fucking, you can still root for him because he's been locked in this container, and if he finally escapes and go wild in revenge, and then Godzilla has to like rein him in, it would have worked. He could have lashed out on the people that were containing him.
It does really feel like they threw Mechagodzilla in this film because they're like, well, we don't want to make any of the main monsters be the bad guys, so we're gonna do. I don't know. It's just a very weird. It's a very weird film that I'm like very surprised at how popular the response has been.
I'm glad people like it. Good for them. But do you think if it was like,
no,
I guess a lot of people did see us in theaters, but if it was a normal summer season, do you think people would be fans of it at all?
No. I think if this movie came out in a normal year, like 2019 or 2018, this would be another CGI heavy monster blockbuster that kind of got forgotten in like a week.
It would be as successful as like Kong Skull Island was, which is like moderately and has some fans.
Well, right. That's probably the best example. Is like, look back at the previous films in this franchise. This franchise does not have a particularly great track record. People are not particularly in love with this franchise. People kind of watch the movies, and then I feel like this is. I mean, I'm not going to say the franchise is bad as a whole. It's very mediocre. It's a really mediocre franchise.
I will say bad, and I don't care about any of it. And I did not watch God of the Monsters for that reason.
I like 2 of the movies. I don't like 2 of the movies. But yeah, I'm not out here claiming that the ones I like are even that great. They're just like good or serviceable. Let's talk about 2 things. One, why versus movies don't work. So we've had movies in our lifetime like Batman v Superman, this one, Freddy versus Jason, Alien versus Predator, and I have a theory about why these movies are always disappointing. It's because when you see 2 characters with verses between them, it invokes the idea of a boxing match, right? But the difference between Tyson Holyfield or Ali Frazier is that when you go to see a boxing match between 2 great fighters, what you get is minimal intro, minimal outro, and mostly the boxing fight. The problem is when you get to these movies, these versus movies, is they're unwilling to cut them down to the bare bones. These movies should be like 80 minutes long, and should just feature majority fighting because that's clearly what your audience wants. But they feel the need to throw all these extra human characters in that no one cares about, and they feel the need to throw in all this extra plot that no one cares about. And that's why these movies, I feel like, always end up in the like 2 to 3 star range, because they're just really like they're always they tell you that's going to be one thing, and then they throw a bunch of extra stuff in between the stuff that you want to see in the first place.
I think the problem is that often it's, two characters from their own, journeys, from their own storylines. They really don't have anything to do with each other until they decide to make money that they should belong in the same reality. So because they're trying to mix two seemingly unrelated, realities into one, they have to make it so contrived to make it believable why they meet or fight when it's not part of why we learn to love those characters.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. That is definitely part of it. Is like one character always gets shafted. There's always one character whose story dominates. Like they always call them versus movies, which would make you think there's some kind of equality in this film. But like, if you go watch Freddy versus Jason, that's totally a Freddy movie. You watch this film, it's so much more based around Kong than it is about Godzilla. That's kind of a consistent trend with all these things.
I think really what they should learn is to not base any movies, adapt them from arguments that 11-year-olds had on a walk home from school.
It is really a correct art. It's really a really good point, which is like, please stop making these movies. They're never. One thing that, this is something that the MCU does well, which is that they bring characters together from their different movies, but they've never done the stupid versus thing. Like there's always but they
didn't tag it that way. That's what Civil War essentially was, but they still made it natural within where the storyline was going.
Right, but they based it in story they never sold the movie as like, you will get to see these two characters fight. It was always, there is a story and people will be on different sides, but we are not going to call
was already based on the storyline somewhat that was effective and had some place in the universe.
It's more story based. This film, you can feel how contrived it is. They are like, okay, basically this is what this movie looked like is somebody sat together and they took a whiteboard and they wrote fight 1, fight 2, fight 3. And they were like, let's fill in the gaps between all these things. Like, that's clearly how they made this movie. They didn't really think about, they didn't build the fights. The fights were built into the story that exists in the film. The story was built to contain the fights because that's what they clearly care about. But they're not self-aware enough to realize that they could just get rid of all the stupid shit that we don't really need to see and just let us see monster fighting, because that's what your audience wants when they come to this movie anyway.
For sure.
Yeah. I already brought my theory up about why the Godzilla movies all have 3 characters storylines you don't like. Let's talk about you haven't seen Godzilla King of the Monsters.
No, I never will.
Okay. I'm going to tell you my favorite characters in these 4 movies because I watched all these things. Ready? Okay. I have a very short list. Legitimately coming up with a top 10 would be impossible. The human characters in these franchise movies are terrible. They're really bad. And this is actually like kind of shocking because if you go look at the cast lists of these films, there's like a crap load of really good actors that are completely ignored or given nothing roles. Let's start with Godzilla. I like Ken Watanabe playing Ishihiro Serizawa, the scientist. Ken Watanabe is awesome. He says the word Godzilla way cooler than all us white people do, and it just sounds so much cooler. And like, can we just like take every white person in the movie and anytime they say Godzilla, just have Ken Watanabe dub them saying it, because it would be so much cooler. I like David Strathairn as the military guy. David Strathairn just has a classic like military voice and demeanor that'll always work for me. Yikes. Kong Skull Island. John C. Reilly plays a World War II pilot who gets stranded on Skull Island for like 28 years, and he's very weird and goofy, and it kind of works because these movies need more goofy, silly characters that kind of play into the ridiculousness of living in a world where there's a giant ape as king. And then Bradley Whitford is fun as a scientist, kind of snarky, and I like Charles Dance as like an eco-terrorist. And that might be my list of the characters I like in
this movie. Yeah.
Rebecca Hall is, I guess, okay. Damien Bashir is okay, but there's no one in this movie that really like you go, man, that was fun. I enjoyed
Before we
watching.
sign off, then which connects, then you do gotta say who's the best Hang though. You can't if you don't have a favorite character, but who's the best Hang?
In this film?
Yeah. And is it just King Kong? That guy's gonna get exhausted and just actually I think he'd be a horrible Hang.
I think he'd get really grumpy. He'd be like a real.
Well, he's like too alpha. They're both too alpha. That's the whole problem. This is really a movie about toxic masculinity. They both, they both just need to constantly prove that they're better. Their penis is bigger than each other.
It is kind of like
so.
That's a question.
Yeah. So King Kong's a bad Hank. He just starts ripping dinosaur heads off right when he gets to the Hollow Earth just to prove that he's the badass.
All right, why don't you tell me who your best Hang is, and then I will.
Oh, it's Rebecca Hall. Because Rebecca Hall, here's the thing. I know a lot of these people. I feel like these are people Sarah hangs out with, like, you know, science grad students who get like so uptight and nerdy in their stuff that when they need to let loose, they'll let loose, and she'll be a lot of fun when she's away from work because it's her only time to debrief. Right, and she has fucking great King Kong stories and probably just general private stories. She has to be a primatologist in general, and I'm into that shit. She's the best.
Okay, I'm going to say that Ronnie Chang, who plays the clerk that sells them candy, is the best thing. He just seems like a chill dude who's kind of funny, and like I like the fact that he tells him to sell him candy, and only one of the three people is smart enough to realize that he's like, just give me money so I can give you information. He's also really funny. I don't know if anyone out there watches his stand-up. He's really funny and has a couple of really good bits.
I know him primarily from Daily Show, which I've enjoyed a lot.
His stand-up is really funny. He has some really good bits about like stereotypes of Asians and like the being really good at math stereotype. He has like a whole stereotype. He has a bunch of like math jokes that are really good. There's like some sample size jokes, some real nerdy stuff that actually works really, really funny. Yeah, so I think him. Because like let's be real.
Worst Hank's easy. Worst Hank is Brian Tyree.
Oh, Brian Tyree Henry. Well, it's actually there's a lot of answers. Brian Tyree Henry, terrible Hang. Alexander Skarsgård, terrible Hang.
Obnoxious, yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown or Julian Dennison, terrible Hang, no children.
Wait, Damien Bashir, horrible person. Would he be a good Hang? If
honestly, might be a fun Hang. Might be a fun Hang.
He would like spend a lot of money. He would have like very elaborate parties.
Somebody like may end up like overdosing at one of his parties, but like
if you don't have to like get to know him or consider him a friend, if you can just like vicariously hang around him.
Honestly, I feel like he'd be fun to hang out as long as you don't get in the way of his like company.
Yeah.
As long as there's like no clear competition between you, I think he'd be a pretty decent Hang. Yeah. That's it. We talked Godzilla and Kong for like nearly 50 minutes. Yeah, I don't know why we did that.
25 minutes, my ass.
That's us. We always do this. With that being said, thank you for listening, everyone. Yeah, you know, if you want to check out this movie on HBO Max, check it out. Send us your thoughts in the comments if you disagree with us. Probably a lot of people will, because a lot of people clearly like this movie a lot more than we did.
Or if you buy $500 worth of our merch on TeePublic, me and Lucas will act out the whole movie for you in costume in a private stream.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's also really important you guys donate to our Patreon. If we do not get $15,000 of support in the next 24 hours, we will be forced to stop making podcasts.
Yeah, and you will also have to start the Patreon for us.
Yes, wanted somebody who will make a Patreon for us and subscribe at the $1,000 level. Because we would like to make money on the Patreon without doing any effort.
Yeah,
because let's be real for a second. Zach is not making the Patreon. There's 0% chance I get Zach to build a Patreon for me.
I mean, I have a Patreon to help me buy Lego, so I guess I can make a Patreon.
That's not a Patreon, it's a GoFundMe. We don't want to GoFundMe for our podcast. All right, this is fun. We talked Godzilla versus Kong. We're going to throw some of these random reviews in every now and again, especially in 2021, when so many films are going to streaming right away, especially like somewhat bigger stuff. We have some stuff locked in that we really want to talk about regardless of what the reviews are. And then we have some stuff that's dependent on like if there's any buzz and if people are interested at all. We'll try not to do reviews on stuff that no one cares about or is trashed. Like Zach and I are pretty much out on like if a movie comes out and gets 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, probably not going to review that just because we don't want to force ourselves to rush out there and jump on watching these movies if they're terrible.
Yeah, we're not necessarily only doing the biggest movies, but I think it has to be one of two criteria, which is either it seems like the world around us cares about it, or one of us just really care about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there needs to be a reason. We're not gonna do 25 reviews on the side. We're not becoming a review channel, but this is just a fun thing for us to do. That's also super easy to do because it doesn't involve us doing like, more detailed dives in these films. It's just like, come shoot the shit, have some fun.
We're watching it anyways, and we like being part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
The conversation being had. Yeah.
With that being said, if you have thoughts, throw them in the comment section. We'd like to read them and see if anyone disagrees with us. I'm sure a lot of people will, because a lot of people like this movie. We have another episode coming up on Saturday. Right. It's a Wonderful Life. We may have a special guest that we're not going to reveal right now, even if Zack tries to. We'll
it's Santa Claus.
Santa Claus is coming on our episode. Santa Claus is coming to town, folks. Thank you, Zack, for showing up, for talking about Kong, a movie you did not care about.
Nah.
I had fun. We hope you had fun, and we will see you later this week. Enjoy movies and life.
Wear a mask. Outro ever. You can just say bye. Wear a mask. Be healthy. Good luck. Good riddance.